set means new mechanics, and Midnight Hunt is clearly seeking to push the boundaries of what makes Innistrad Innistrad. But how do you keep a third trip to a beloved plane feeling fresh, and what does this set's functional identity tell us about the plane's evolving narrative and the attitude towards flavorful design? Welcome to Magic the Flavouring, the Magic the Gathering podcast, where we talk about all things Magic flavour design and lore. I'm your host, Andy Mann.
Hello, this is Nathan Cancel.
And we are back on Innistrad. The whole set has been spoiled. In fact, when we recorded last week's episode, because we recorded it relatively late in our sort of like cycle of doing these things, I think we recorded that episode. The next day, the set was spoiled, and a whole bunch of stuff that we were like, I'm not sure, or I think this is going to happen, either came to pass, didn't come to pass, or came to pass in a way that we didn't expect, and kind of undermined a good sort of third of everything that we thought.
Hey, look, we can't be right about everything, right?
That's the game. That's the game, isn't it? The big one was, I don't think they're going to go like full serial killer. They're going to have a couple of cards, and then the Meat Hook Massacre literally got spoiled about an hour after we stopped recording. So.
One thing that I heard was great was the low-res image made one of our group think that the hand in the foreground was like a little mushroom dude, like jumping up. I was like, oh, that's cute. That's way nicer than a grizzled
hand.
So if you want a nicer swing on that card, just look out for the mushroom dude.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the other one, which was I was going on for ages, being really coy about the fact that I thought we would see Geralf in a different way. I was like, we might not come back in the same way. My whole thing is that he was going to turn himself into some sort of abomination, or he was going to turn the experiments on himself. And then we saw that the backside of the Ludovic card was him turning himself into a monstrosity. And I was like, that's exactly the storyline I thought they were going to do for Geralf. So sort of half a win, but also that card was probably out and about, and I might have seen it and then just conflated things without realising that's what I was doing. So, yeah. That's the problem with perpetual spoiler season. You're always making predictions, and then within 2 seconds, the predictions are gone and by, and now we're already talking about Crimson Vow. So,
yeah.
Anyway, that's not this episode. This episode is us talking about the mechanics of Midnight Hunt. So we've done our kind of hypes. We are now moving on to mechanics. Then we'll go on to our flavor picks, and then we'll do a whole bunch of story stuff because the story looks really, really cool. So yes, when we do mechanics episodes, if you're relatively new to the show, we tend not to focus too heavily on whether we think they're viable in any given format. Although that does come into it because we are Magic players. We focus on the flavour of the mechanics and whether we think they're evocative of what they're trying to say, whether we think they fit with the plane, whether we think that they're too similar to other stuff in terms of their flavour and function, all that kind of jazz. So yeah, we're going to jump into it. There is a lot going on. We were just running through before we hit record, we've got this mechanic and that mechanic and this new keyword. Oh, remember there's this and there's that. This set is quite packed out with play patterns and different cards doing different things. It's rather a lot. I'm actually quite surprised.
I find that sets that rely heavily on graveyard mechanics, say for example Amonkhet with Aftermath and Embalm and stuff like that, they tend to be quite complex anyway because you've got playability outside of the stuff in the battlefield, right? Everything either comes back a second time, or you can use your utility a few turns later, that kind of thing. Or there's death triggers. It's not like anything happens. It's not like a 2/2. It's it's a 2/2 that you can flash back, and then when it dies, it does a thing. So at each point, you've got decision points. So when you want to get it back again. Again, we'll talk about this when we get to the new keyword. They've kind of twisted things to make you have to pay a bit more attention as to how you get the most out of your cards. So yeah, it's more complex than it initially looks to me.
Sure, and I suppose if you're building off the back of the third time returning to a set, you can kind of layer on top of things that you've already done. So the original Innistrad was famous for bringing in the double-faced cards. We keep calling them flip cards, but flip cards are technically the Kamigawa ones. We've done a whole episode on this. Go back and listen to that one. But this is the double-faced cards where we've had Transform. And they've obviously brought that back and changed it round and put new things onto it each time we come back to Innistrad, and this time's no different. But it just means that now a lot of these mechanics that we're going to be talking about revolve around the transform mechanic, as well as just cards that just straight up transform with no sort of discernible mechanic that is shared by anything else. And it just seems like there's a lot, and the fact that any set that relies on double face cards, of which now it's kind of commonplace, that it's not just, there's 300 odd cards in a set. It's there's really 400, 500, 600 even, because there are so many cards that double up, so you're really worrying about far more permanence than you would normally worry about. And I think it makes for interesting games, but it also tells a whole narrative which we'll get into. But yeah, it's just a lot. So we're gonna try and bounce through them because there is a lot going on. Shall we just jump into it? Let's talk about Disturb. This is a new one. This is a brand new one. So Disturb is the main mechanic for the spirits of the set. So obviously all the different tribes, you have like spirits, vampires, werewolves, zombies, humans, and each one obviously gets their own kind of key mechanic. And this is the one for the spirits or the geists of Innistrad. So Disturb generally reads that you may cast this card from your graveyard, transform it for its Disturb cost. So if you were to look at something like Baithook Angler, for example, which is a 1 and a blue for a human peasant 2/1, it has Disturb for 1 and a blue. So if this card goes into your graveyard, you can cast it for its Disturb cost, and it comes back as Hookhaunt Drifter, which is a 1/2 flying spirit, and if Hookhaunt Drifter would be put into your graveyard from anywhere, exile it instead. So it's you getting, it's flashback, which we will get onto in a minute. All mechanics are flashback or kicker, I kind of feel like at this point. That's the joke, right?
Well, I kind of buried the lead a little bit when I talked about Amonkhet before, because Amonkhet, the set where spells had aftermath and the creatures got flashback, and now we've got Midnight Hunt, the set where spells have flashback and the creatures have aftermath. It's just kind of swapped over, which is quite cute. But yeah, everything says flashback with extra steps. It's all kicker with extra steps. I mean, there's 2 mechanics in Magic, get over it. That's going to keep calling it different things.
Yeah, for sure. But I do like it. So looking at the card gallery, there are, as far as I can see, there's 16 cards with Disturb. Or they're all in blue and white as well. Actually, no, there is one black one. But it is cool to see because obviously this is a way not only to evoke the idea that in Innistrad, the Blessed Sleep, which is the kind of sought after afterlife for people on the plane, which is where your spirit essentially goes back into the full-on afterlife. But if you don't have the Blessed Sleep, you come back as a Geist if you have unfinished business or you didn't get like sort of blessed or consecrated correctly and all that kind of thing. And I do like the idea that we have had Geists and Spirits obviously in Innistrad before, and we have them in this set just kind of as their own thing. And we have had cards which have kind of evoked this whole idea of being living and dead, but to give it like its own proper mechanic and having the sort of situation of the card change with the double face cards on an actual mechanic rather than just like a one-off card, I think really ties this idea of, the humans of the plane either getting their sort of, just desserts or getting their sort of deserved afterlife is really like kind of a cool idea. Do you have any sort of cards that stand out to you with Disturb on them?
It's funny because I'm literally just kind of flipping back and forth. It's funny because when I started flipping back and forth between it reminded me a lot of like the Eldrazi, like the Eldritch Moon kind of Eldrazi cards, where they went, "Oh, how can we take this like normally kind of thing and then make it kind of monstrous?" Out of all of them, I really like Dennek. I think it's also mostly because I've just read the story that he's appeared in, so it's quite nice. And in the story, you find him kind of as the Geist. You don't see him in life. But none of them jump out at me incredibly because a few of them have the kick like the rider clause, right? Of because they tend to all be flying creatures because obviously spirits, and a lot of them can only block creatures with flying, which takes away a little bit of their like, oh, okay, that's a bit strong, right? You just get your creature back and does something different, kind of thing. And they kind of obviously tried to curtail the power level on this a little bit, as you said last episode about how with some werewolves that you can't just make both sides really strong, otherwise it makes a broken card. It's two broken cards in one. So I feel like they kind of underplayed it a little bit. I think it's really cool that you do see a black one. Because I think it's it's the only black spirit in the set. In fact, it's a spirit rogue as well. When you flip it, it's quite cool.
Yeah, sure. So this is Covert Cut Purse for 2 and a black, human rogue. When enters the battlefield, destroy target creature you don't control that was dealt damage this turn. So this is the Cut Purse killing their target. And then it's 2/1 and it has Disturb for 4 and a black. And then the back side of it is Covetous Geist. Which is a flying death touch. If Covetous Geist be put into your graveyard from anywhere, exile it instead. So this is the idea that you can't just keep recurring these Disturb cards backwards and forwards. And also it's the idea that I think if once all these spirits have kind of achieved their end goal in their Geist form, that they do eventually get their Blessed Sleep and do kind of dissipate into the ether of wherever like Innistrad's afterlife really is. The flavor text on the back of Covetous Geist is it has no need of wealth in the afterlife. It steals and kills purely for its own spiteful amusement. Kaya. And so I really like this idea that the spirit on the back is absolutely doing what the Covert Cut Purse was doing in life, and it's just this person is so vile that even as a spirit it's still going around and killing people and trying to steal stuff. It's pretty brutal. But you do have other narratives going on as well. If you look at like Malevolent Hermit, So Malevolent Hermit with artwork by Darken. If you look at the character, and also the name Malevolent Hermit, pretty nasty looking dude, like just horrible cantankerous old man.
Grumpus as fuck.
He's a Grumpus, human wizard Grumpus, and he has Disturb. But on the backside, he's Benevolent Geist, and the flavor text reads, "All his old grudges suddenly seemed laughably petty, so he laughed." And it's just like, oh wow, like, in death, he's a lot of a happier man, which is, like these stories that they get to tell, these kind of, backside, frontside things are pretty special. You have some other things like Bait Hook Angler, which is a fisherman that you can see is about to get chomped by a big sea creature, and then on the back he's Hook Haunt Drifter, so he's now a dead sort of sailor, kind of haunting the graphs and all that kind of thing. The most sad one, and Wizards have been doing this a lot with dogs recently, and they've been really trying to pull on people's heartstrings, and I don't know how I feel about it, because I kind of feel like it's a little bit fan servicey, and it's a little bit too twee for me. But you have Morning Patrol, which is 2 and a white for a 2/3 human soldier with vigilance and disturb. The flavor text is, "It's creepy out here, isn't it, boy? I always feel like someone's watching us." And it's a patrol Cathar with their doggo. And then on the back, we have Morning Apparition, which is a flying vigilant spirit soldier, 2/1. And it has the flavor text, "You could see the spirits all along, couldn't you? Well, now I can too." And the Cathar is now a spirit playing with their still alive dog who can see the spirit.
I mean, thank God they didn't also kill the dog, right? Like, well, that it could have gone there. They flip it over and the guy's still alive and it's the dog that's the spirit. Like, that would have been true, like, oh, Wizards. I feel like they probably should have. I feel like Innistrad kind of wants that. I don't want a nice story with him stroking his dog, even though he's the spirit, so how can he stroke the dog? Give me dead dog. Give me dead dog vibes. Make everyone bawl their eyes out.
No.
Give me feelings, Wizards. Give me feelings.
No, absolutely not. But yeah, they've been doing this a lot where they have like sort of very twee ideas of like friendship in the afterlife, and often involving like people and their pets. And I don't know why, it seems to be a theme in the in the design room that I don't know whether someone's got something they need to work through. I don't know. Anyway, I'm not going to speculate on that. I think this Disturb mechanic gives us one of the most haunting artworks by Daniel Lundgren, which is the backside of Gale Drifter, which is a hippogriff, which is Whale Drifter. And the artwork for Whale Drifter is just a hippogriff. Or what do they call them? Just griffs, don't they, on Innistrad?
Yes.
Yes. And the head of the griff is just gone in its spirit form.
Not okay.
And it's just an abyssal void of Geist energy.
Yeah, this was one that was giving me like the Eldritch Moon vibes. I'm like, oh, that's just basically when you took the werewolf, you transformed it, and the werewolf's face went all tentacly. Like, this is more of that. Don't pretend like Emrakul's gone forever, guys.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, all in all, Disturb, I think, pretty successful mechanic, flavorfully and functionally as well. I think it gives your spirits a bit more utility, tells a completely like solid narrative, and really fits into the idea of Innistrad's life-death cycle.
Yeah, really cool. The naming conventions as well tend to work quite. So you got Devoted Graphkeeper to Departed Soulkeeper, that kind of idea. It has that mirroring effect. Also, very little blink effects in the set, I think, of any, because that would break Disturb in half. Like Ghostly Flicker, very, very cool. Could have been reprinted in the set from Innistrad originally. Definitely didn't get printed specifically, but I think because of Disturb cards, which I think why there's only a light spattering of them. I feel like
despite the fact that it would have been an absolute flavor win with Ghostly
Absolutely, Flicker. Yeah. But imagine double flip. Yeah, it's just that's a lot of value. It's a lot of value.
Awesome. Okay, let's move on to what I'm going to consider. It's not. You said it's not really a mechanic. It's more of a keyword now that's being put onto tokens, and that is Decayed. So zombies are back. Of course they are, because they never stop, and Innistrad is full of zombies.
Yeah, but not better than ever.
Not better than ever. Actively worse, as admitted by Mark Rosewater on his designing Innistrad articles that he puts out every now and then. Yes, so Decayed essentially is just a keyword, and the reminder text reads, a decayed creature can't block when it attacks, sacrifice at the end of combat. So, terrible. On the face of it, but I think the trade-off that a lot of the designers were talking about is that decayed zombies are far easier to put onto the battlefield, and it's like a far cheaper rate to achieve having them. So you can essentially just flood your board with a bunch of 2/2 attackers that can't block, and then they go away. So I again think this is pretty amazing. It's a little bit sad that it seems like a function fail, but as a flavor thing, I think it's pretty amazing. What do you think?
I don't like the name. And that's the only thing I don't like about it.
Why?
Because it's I don't know. I feel like it just I feel it's a touch clunky. I don't feel like it rolls off the tongue particularly well. I don't know what I can't remember. Like I couldn't. There was a couple of names that were being rolled around Reddit. One of them was like fetid or something like that. I was like, there was one that got me. That I was like, okay, that does sound better. Forgotten it, so it can't have been that much better. And I've kind of come around to Decayed since. I think sometimes it doesn't roll off the tongue very well. You can like create a zombie creature token with Decayed. It's not decaying. You know, I don't know. Like the name, the syntax kind of is a bit clunky to me. I do think in terms of play pattern, it's good because it's trying to promote this idea of pro-action, right? With the zombies, you kind of sit back and control the board. Like there's a card, for example, Startle, 1 and a blue. It's an instant. Target creature gets -2/-0 until end of turn. You create a 2/2 black zombie creature token with Decayed, and you draw a card. Now, if that didn't have Decay, that'd be one of the best blue spells printed in a long, long time. And it's like this ability of like taking away that agency of like you can't just sit on your laurels, build up this big army, and then kind of just stall out the game. It's like, no, you need to either be using these to sacrifice them, which obviously all zombies like being sacrificed anyway, or attacking with them and trying to, use that kind of like, I guess also, zombies at this point, they're not like the big horde issue, right? It's not like in the first couple of sets of Innistrad where like the zombies were like, the endless ranks of the dead. It feels almost like now they're kind of like left. It even says, again, I'm going to reference the latest story, it talks about how Liliana, after resurrecting all of Thraben, went, well, enjoy all the zombies, I guess. They're stuck with them now, and it kind of makes sense that after all of this time, they are kind of a little bit more dilapidated. They're not as fresh, right? So I like this for flavor reasons and for mechanical reasons. So I feel like the play pattern will be like you need to be proactively using these zombies for something. And again, they like being sacrificed, right? So it makes sense.
It makes sense. I think it does. And also, we're not getting rid of zombies in general either. I mean, like if we talk about just outside of the Innistrad, like limited format, zombies are one of the most popular tribes in Magic, and if you look at some Eternal formats, and especially things like Commander, like there is no shortage of zombie tribal support. So I think taking your foot off the gas on zombies a little bit in terms of making them like super viable all the time, I think is not a bad thing, especially if it gives you room to do something a bit more interesting. It shows to me an evolution of like how they want to express the fact that something is dead and still walking as well. So for me, if I was to think of a zombie and just be like, what's the archetypal zombie in Magic? It has to be walking corpse from original Innistrad, right? Which is 1 and a black. 1 and a black for a 2/2 creature zombie. That's it. Vanilla 2/2 for 2 zombie. And obviously it being a bear, like I suppose you could sort of just argue, it's just they wanted to give black a 2/2 for 2. But in my head, when I played it, when I first started playing Magic, and that was a good common to slot 4 into in a kitchen table deck, it's because you could, like, say by turn 6 to close out a game, you could slam 3 of them on the battlefield, like, very easily. And it's like you've just suddenly built up this zombie army out of nowhere because they're cheap, they're effective, and they're, they do what they need to do, which is fine. But as Magic has gotten more adventurous with its design, and it's kind of trying to build in more narrative reasons as to why things do things. In this set, you have Hobbling Zombie, which is 2 and a black for a zombie, 2/2 with Death Touch, that has, when Hobbling Zombie dies, create a 2/2 black zombie creature token with Decayed. And I just think that is so much more evocative on the bit of cardboard of what a zombie would be like. Like, you kill it once, and then it comes back, not quite as effective, but it's still there, and it's still attacking you. Like, you have to kill it again. Like, you have to keep trying to put these zombies down, which I think is a far more slicker, inbuilt way of doing it. Like, I don't necessarily have to use my imagination to be like, I have to put loads of zombies down, which is why zombies are good in Magic, because you swarm with them. It's like, no, the zombie is telling you why it's a zombie. And I think that's really cool.
Yeah, I guess it doesn't make a lot of sense as to why this rotting corpse can just keep standing there taking hits over and over and over again, right? Like, surely, like, you lop the leg off and it falls over, you lop the arm off and it can no longer attack you, so it kind of presents that a bit better. Plus, you've got that zombies are 2/2s. This is a defined, it's never going to change. And it was like, well, how do we find a way to, I think Mark specifically said this, of how do we find a way to make them more pushed without changing their stat line? Because they were like, well, we can't make them 1/1s because all zombies are 2/2s, and this is almost like their nice middle ground. And I think it's a nice middle ground that actually works better and more effectively than I think they even realized to begin with. It's a very evocative ability, and it will probably play quite strong as well. Again, I like this idea of it being an aggressive archetype, like a lot of things like Gravecrawler that are recursive, zombie blockers. They're not, because they can't block. And that's the whole point. If you can just make a 2/1 for free out of your graveyard every turn, then again, same thing with what's the vampire spirit thing called? Bloodghast. Same
Mm,
idea, right? Of where these recursive threats should feel like recursive threats, not recursive walls to
mm.
defend yourself with. I feel like a wall of zombies wouldn't last you very long. Whereas, when you get them to go out and attack everything, cool, flavor sense, like it.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, 100%. I really like it. As as I say, on the face of it, it makes zombies look actively worse, but I think it makes zombies far more zombified. So yeah, again, another home run for me, I think.
Very good.
All right, let's go from 2 awesome mechanics to one. Wah, wah. In my opinion, Coven.
Yeah,
Oh, they just can't make humans interesting, can they?
I
They
mean,
just
it's just
can't do it.
all the different ways of going wide, right? Like, and there's even some go tool. I mean, I guess the whole point, right? So they've done +1/+1 counters to build up your individuals, like Champion of the Parish, for example. Really good example of a 1-drop that just gets bigger and bigger and bigger the more humans you make. So you're technically going wide and going tall at the same time. Whereas now it's like, okay, you want to go wide, you need at least 3 different creatures. But the fact they have to have varying powers means that you've got to play more interestingly around the curve. You can't just drop a bunch of 2/2s. And I guess it makes combat more interesting, right? Because then the stat lines become a bit more interesting. It's not just a bunch of 2/2s or 3/3s. Like, it's usually like you've got some 0/4s, some 1/4s, that kind of thing in the set.
Yeah, so Coven reads that it's an effect that provides an effect or ability if you control 3 or more creatures with different powers. So, for example, Candlegrove Witch, which is 1 and a white human warlock, 2/2, has Coven. At the beginning of combat on your turn, if you control 3 or more creatures with different powers, Candlegrove Witch gains flying until end of turn. And they've basically just moved Ravnican Boros strats into Innistradian, Innistradi.
It is battalion, right? It's
Yeah.
just battalion. Yeah, exactly.
It's just battalion, and it wasn't good then. It's not good now. It's also, I don't think, particularly flavorful. So I looked up what the word Coven really sort of like, if it was to be defined by the Merriam-Webster, I suppose, if you're an American, or if like the Oxford English Dictionary, and it's a collection of individuals with similar interests or activities, a coven of intellectuals, for example, or an assembly of band of usually 13 witches. So this kind of word coven got stapled onto like the idea of like a band of witches, relatively in like the 1900s. It wasn't like something that was really used back in the day. This is like the kind of more modern interpretation of what band of witches would be called. So the idea is that, as you said last week, the word witch, even though they're having witches in Innistrad, because they're leaning heavily into this paganistic idea, they're not using the word witch because that's got some negative connotations. So they're using it for the warlocks and like the humans of the set. And it's, the word coven is fine. I'm actually kind of surprised we haven't had something similar in the past. And the idea that it's a group of individuals coming together to form a band and to perform like a ritual of sorts to give buffs to other people, I think is fine. I just don't understand. Is the different power and toughness thing flavorfully meant to read like, so it's like different people in the community, so it's like
exactly, yeah, it's the different people kind of coming together, and it doesn't matter if you're weak or if you're strong. Together we are stronger.
I suppose that's kind of nice thinking about it, but at the same time, it's just humans clubbing together and attacking things again.
It's having to have 3 things on the board. It's having to deal with like, if you're facing against this, as long as you've got a few bits of removal, you just keep killing the 3rd thing, right?
Yeah,
you're like, okay, cool. I mean, again, I don't know how resilient it is from like a play perspective. Flavor-wise, I don't mind it, but it is, again, it's just white weenie, but with a slightly different shade on it.
Yeah, I mean, okay, all right. As I'm talking about it, I'm literally coming around to it as a flavor thing.
I guess it literally just comes down to play, but like, I think that's why like sometimes pushback, like some flavorful mechanics work in the context of the set. You're like, cool, really like it. Doesn't make me want to play those colors.
Yeah,
and that's kind of the issue, right? Is where like for some people, the decayed mechanic will make people go like, oh, well, I guess I don't really want to play zombies this time around. Whereas for me, I'm like, oh, no, it makes me want to play zombies more. Yeah. So I guess it kind of depends. We maybe just don't like that kind of idea of the mechanic. And what else? I guess what else do you do with like white green? I mean, I've been trying for ages to try and make it more diverse and more interesting, but realistically, relying on creatures only gives you so many different directions to push a mechanic, be it go wide with different powers or go tall. Like, like green does everything, so everything becomes a bit vanilla with it, right?
It's just the idea that, there's only so much playroom you have with a creature's power at certain mana values. So you can't feasibly make a 2-drop like 5 toughness. So that means you've got to wait till like turn 4, 5, 6 even in a limited or standard game before you get Coven like
Yeah.
online.
Unless you flip it, right? Because it kind of plays into the... Weirdly enough, Coven and Werewolves actually work quite well together, that you can have your 2-drop 2/2 that then flips into a 4/3, and you're like, okay, cool, I've got my 4 tough, my
But then
4
that's
power
like an
creature
automatic
onto...
flavor fail. That goes completely against the ethos of this podcast, Nathan.
I know, right? That's the thing that annoys me. I'm like, I guess from a mechanical point of view, you can make it work. And I imagine it might play very, very well, but yeah, flavor-wise, I'm like, I would have liked something that feels a little bit more... a little less, we're all in this together. And that's it. That's all they've got, you know?
I will say there's one card that is flavorfully sticking out to me, and it's sticking out to me because it's a transform card more than it is because it's a Coven card, and that's Ambitious Farmhand, which is 1 and a white for a 1/1 human peasant. When Ambitious Farmhand enters the battlefield, you may search your library for a basic plains card, reveal it, put into your hand, then shuffle, which for an uncommon is very cool just in itself, just that like line of text. And then it has Coven for 1 white. Also Coven, and then so if you have Coven online, you pay 1 white, transform Ambitious Farmhand, and it becomes Seasoned Cathar. It's a 3/3 with lifelink, and the flavor text reads: "The Cathars have taught me many things, but I will never forget the hard, honest work that first calloused up my hands." And I just like this idea that the journey of this farmer to becoming like a warrior of like righteousness, and doing that through having to have a community which they're farming for and clubbing together, and then having the Cathars train them. So presumably you have like other sort of 4 or 5, 6 drops on the battlefield that are these Cathar like characters, or you have like someone like Ritual Guardian that's a 3-drop. So you play like the 2-drop farmhand, then the Ritual Guardian, then you have something else, and then you can flip the farmhand into the Cathar. Like that's a really nice story. It's just a shame that they had to take up a whole mechanic to get that one card to function that way. Do you know? I don't know. Maybe I'm being too harsh. It's not my thing.
That's fair. No, I feel the same. I'm also now looking through, and Contortionate Troop don't have the Bard subtype. Wow, Wizard, you're learning. Not every performer has to happen to be a Bard. Good job.
Yeah, but they're just human. That seems
good. I know it's weird again, right? Give performers better class types, Wizards. Do better.
How do you feel? This is a whole other podcast episode. We're done with Innistrad mechanics now. How do you feel about single creature cards with multiple creatures on them?
What I find weird about Contortionist Troop is it doesn't start as a 3/3, and there are definitely at least 3. Well, there's technically 4 of them in the artwork. You can see a foot from the top as well. It's like, how could it come in with 1+1+1 cards? There are 4 of them. Sorry, most of them were busy. You've just got me tonight. Actually, that makes flavor sense to me. Okay, cool. But then that might be easy at making... whatever. Don't start... No, stop it.
Cool. Yeah, tune in for next week's episode. All right. I really love the flavor and the aesthetics of the sort of Selesnya humans in this set. I think it's a really nice little change up from previous sets, from moving from the church to the warlocks. Coven. It's just battalion.
It's just more committing to the board. More good luck with that board wipe.
Yeah. Wicked.
Yeah.
Sorry,
Look, it was so disparaging.
Cool. I mean, those are we've actually done that very quickly. Those are like the kind of big ones that they've brought in. Oh no, I suppose. Well, no, we'll get to the big one. Okay, this is why I didn't have this up with the others, because this is the big one. So let's move on to werewolves. And the brand new mechanic that isn't just like a werewolf mechanic, but is like a board state mechanic, which is Daybound and Nightbound. Now, I'll be very honest, listeners. Every time I try and think of a slick way to describe Day and Nightbound, I always get confused. So I'm going to defer to Nathan to describe what Day and Nightbound actually does.
Okay, so before with original werewolves, there was this idea of one player of flipping back and forth based on the number of spells that were played. Instead of that being independent of each card, there is now a state that the game can be in. It starts without a day or night cycle. There are many cards in the set that literally say if it isn't day or night, it becomes day, and there's a little card that you add in, kind of like dungeon cards, where it sits separate from the game and it sets the time to either day or to night. And cards that are day-bound and night-bound will come in on the side that it currently is. So if it is daytime, the day-bound cards will come on the front side. If it happens to be nighttime, they'll come on their back side. And then there's the additional rider text, similar to the original werewolves, of if a player casts 2 or more spells on their turn, and it's nighttime, it flips to daytime. And in daytime, if a player casts no spells during their turn, it flips to nighttime.
Mm.
So again, we talked about this last week about now the werewolves have, or the werewolf players have a bit more autonomy, but it also allows you to manipulate it into being nighttime and then have your cards come in on the stronger side immediately. This doesn't affect any other cards with transform apart from the ones that say daybound and nightbound on them. Which I think is fine, because for flavor reasons, some of the other cards would be busted if you could just drop it in on the reverse side.
So let's just talk about day and night bound just in a little bubble, and then we can start talking about how this affects other transform cards and indeed other werewolves, and in fact what it affects other werewolves that doesn't affect these cards, which makes me far more angry. But let's talk about day and night bound. In a bubble, if you told me that this is what we're doing from werewolves now, I would think that this is a far better solution, both flavorfully and mechanically, for werewolves. Because not only does it fit into the narrative of, like, why do you have to see the werewolf transformation? So with previous werewolves, you could never get it in on the werewolf side straight away. Sometimes you could have cards that would make the werewolves come in and then flip automatically, but you would never have them come in as a werewolf, which I think is, I mean, made sense at the time. But now the fact that if the board state is nightbound and they come in as a werewolf, that makes far more sense. That if you are, as a game, in the middle of the night, you're not going to see a human just kind of be like, hello, and then suddenly burst out as a lycanthrope. Like, the werewolves are going to be there straight away. It makes you more aggressive. It makes, if you're playing a werewolf deck, you feel like you are owning the battlefield a little bit more. And indeed, like, the daybound side has its own sort of advantages, you know, with certain creatures getting certain effects that you may want when it's daybound, and then to flip into nightbound. Gives you far more autonomy. It makes things a lot less feel bad if other people kind of change the game state. Whereas previously with werewolves, especially in like a multiplayer format like Commander, you would never ever get your werewolves to stay werewolves. They would always be humans, because you're not going to have 3 players that are not going to be casting spells. Do you know what I mean? So
yeah, absolutely.
I think flavorfully this is an absolute home run. I love board state mechanics, things like the City's Blessing, for example, is a really good example. Like, where you might have a deck which only has one City's Blessing card in there, but as soon as you have it, you always have it. I love that kind of stuff. And yeah, especially if you're in a limited environment, I think this is going to make the whole sort of standard environment and the limited environment feel like you are on Innistrad, that you are battling these monsters. I think it's an absolute home run, and fits in with the direct narrative of this particular Innistrad set as well. So it's firing on absolutely all cylinders.
I do wish, and I'm glad that they didn't, because I'm glad that they've left it close enough to the original werewolf text that they might errata them. But I wish a little bit that it would have been harder for it to turn back to daytime compared to what it was before. Because in the story, narratively speaking, like, it's the night is encroaching and getting longer, and there is shorter days. Whereas this kind of still seems half a night. It still feels like it's more likely to be daytime than nighttime most of the time, or at least that's what your opponent's going to be pushing towards, right? And I guess it's easier. I guess it's harder to cast 2 spells than it is for someone to not cast any. So I guess it is easier for it to stay nighttime. It takes more of a concerted effort. And I guess as a player who wants it to stay in nighttime, you only have to play 1 spell a turn for it to maintain nighttime, whereas your opponent has to put the concerted effort of having to play more than 1. So I guess actually I take that back immediately. I also think it's good that it makes all of your werewolves act the same at the same time. Every daybound card will be on the same side, and and vice versa to nightbound, depending on the state. Whereas back in the original Innistrad, you could have one werewolf that flipped on this turn, and then the next one who flipped on your other turn. Then they'd be flipping back and forth at different times, which made no sense. How is it daytime for this one and nighttime for this one? You know, beyond the hilarious video of the black bird with the daytime, nighttime. You know, apart from that meme, didn't make any fucking sense. So yeah, again, this idea of homogenizing the mechanic, yet also somehow still excluding all the other werewolves, which is why I think that eventually it will probably do some errattering with it, because there's just no reason not to. There's no card this breaks, particularly in my mind. Because even something like Hunt Master of the Fells, which I think is the closest you can come to, okay, this card is just straight up good without the transforming back and forth. If it comes in straight as Nightbound, you don't get the transform trigger, right? So you're kind of undermining that, like, okay, well, maybe it's really strong if it comes in and flips straight away. But it's not coming in and flipping straight away. It's coming in already flipped. So you don't have to worry about that rider text of, when it's transforming, it does the thing. So, yeah, I mean, it makes it more succinct. It makes it way more noticeable and obvious. Like, it's much more trackable, right? And I think, again, as you say, it's much more flavorful because it feels like you're immersing yourself into that. It's like when in Yu-Gi-Oh! Where, like, you know, Toon World or something was played, and then Toon World would actually pop up and the entire battlefield would become Toon World. That's kind of a little bit like that, of where, like, okay, it's actually the entire battlefield is now night. It's not just, again, isolated to the individual cards. It's a game mechanic for the entire game in the battlefield, which I think works much better.
Yeah, for sure. I also do quite like that a lot of the artist briefs have obviously, with werewolves in general, they probably still have the artist brief, but this one they've really leaned into the idea that on the daybound side, a lot of the cards have like the sort of daytime aesthetic, or at least the idea that it's about to become nighttime. And obviously the other ones it is full on nighttime. So I'm looking at Reckless Stormseeker, for example, which is 2 in a red werewolf with artwork by Manuel Castanon. And you can see the setting sun in the background of Reckless Stormseeker on the daybound side, and then on the nightbound side, it's like a full moon's rise. I just think, it's a really nice narrative.
Is Innistrad's moon ever not full?
No, I think it must be full all the time.
It's full all the time, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, we're obviously not going to get into the metaphysics of how Innistrad works because it's not a full sphere, so the moon can't orbit. Why have I opened this can of worms?
Yeah.
But no, stop. Yeah, always full. It's always full. It's got a heron in it, and now Emrakul. Cool, good, we're good, we're fine.
Okay, I don't want to spend too long talking about my issues with this, because I think this could almost be a discussion for many, many other times. But so, as you said, Daybound, Nightbound hasn't been errated onto old werewolves, despite the fact they're using the same symbols for the front side, back side. Now, that I can sort of understand. What I don't understand is that when they released the design notes for this set, they explicitly stated that cards with Nightbound, Daybound can't be transformed by any other means.
Yeah.
Which means older werewolf synergy cards like Moonmist, and Moonmist was quoted in that article, Moonmist doesn't transform Daybound, Nightbound.
Doesn't do shit, mate. Good job on your synergy cards.
Why aren't more people angry about this? I've seen like 5 tweets about it. I'm furious. So what? They've said, yeah, you've got there's your werewolf commander, there's your werewolf deck. Here's all your new werewolf bits and pieces.
And the prime spell you're going to be playing with it doesn't do anything for half the cards you're playing.
The spell.
It's so true. It's so true. Because I think what's the other one? Full Moon's Rise is the other one. I think that does the same thing of where it flips everything and it regenerates them, and that doesn't do anything either.
Like there's a couple of there are 2 Therese Nielsen artwork cards. Like I don't want to give too much fucking time to them, but I think Full Moon's Rise is one of them, I believe, and then Immerwolf is the other one. But I was like, yeah, we're definitely getting reprints because we want to get new artwork for it. Obviously, we want to get new artists maybe into the game. And they are the werewolf cards, and it's kind of a lot of werewolf players that are maybe a bit itchy about using certain people's artwork are like, right, cool, here we go, new set, let's go, boys. Nope, because they're too synergistic with the non-daybound, nightbound creatures, and that's why we're not getting those reprints. It just clicked when I saw that design. Now I was like, oh, that's why there's no.
Yeah, Emma Wolf really should have been. I guess I'm looking at Full Moon's Rise now. It doesn't actually affect transforming, so whatever they could have just done. They could have done that. They could just reprinted that. Fine. Cool.
Oh, sure. Sorry, that's the pump effect, right?
Yeah, the Emma Wolf really. Yeah, you can really tell that they kind of. You can also even in that article where Mary's talking about, you can tell there was a fissure. There was like a bit of a friction in kind of how they handled it, because they're like, this is better now, but it obviously does make one card completely utterly obsolete, especially if they do errata everything, then it becomes utterly obsolete.
No, just make it so you can flip daybound, nightbound creatures. I don't understand. Like, just when it goes back to day, all the creatures that are currently nightbound, put them to daybound.
But then you've got the same issue of if you flip all of your... So if it's nighttime and you flip everything to daytime and then you cast another sort of a werewolf and it comes in on nighttime, then you've got the flip.
Niche.
Well, they'll turn around and be like, "Well, the card's not even in standard. That's way more niche." Hey, look, we gave you a new werewolf play.
But if it's not in standard and it's only in casual or eternal formats, then what does it matter?
Well, exactly. Rule 0 it. Just have it.
Well, no, but you can't. No, I hate that. I'm like, we've never had this conversation before, like, because it's a pure gameplay thing. Well, I suppose obviously because it does very often affect flavor stuff, I suppose. But yeah, I suppose we will do what do we think of Rule 0 conversation. I think that's a poor line.
Oh yeah, you can't just change the rules because it works better for the deck you want to play. Can I play this card, but it actually does this instead, please? But no, that's you're making up. Yeah, you're making up new cards. That's not how it works.
I'm just
rightfully angry. Yeah, you should be.
It's not just a mechanical fail. It is the flavor fail of all flavor fails, and for the tribe that everyone was desperate to get synergized.
Yeah,
how did they do that? How did they manage that?
The other thing that really pisses me off is that there's only one non-werewolf Daybound Nightbound card. I'm like, there could have been so many other ones that you can play around with that do different things at night and different things. A Scarecrow, for example. I think there might even be actually a Scarecrow in here that flips based on but I think it's just a normal transform card. Let me 1 second. Let me check.
Yeah, I think that's how they've done it. Is that if they don't have themselves day bound, night bound, it's just if it is day or if it is night, then it does a different thing.
Really because Curse of Leeches comes in as a curse on the day bound side and comes down as a creature on the. And I like it. I'm like, cool. It does a different thing day and night. Again, some of the transform cards don't work for that because the idea is that they're showing a narrative of you've got to go through a process to get the effect of it flipping. Right? There's the narrative progression of the card, whereas these are just. Daytime on one thing, nighttime on another thing. There is still flavour on the cards, and it does make sense. But realistically, they flip-flop back and forth, whereas most transform cards don't. But it's annoying that they only put this, day-bound, night-bound idea only on one non-werewolf card, because I feel like maybe there was room. Maybe they didn't have enough space to do that and fit as many werewolves as they wanted to in the set.
Maybe.
Because I still feel like they're a little light on werewolves anyway in the set. There's only 20 of them.
Yeah, in the werewolf set.
Including Arlen, yeah. Well, let's see how many vampires we get in the Crimson Vow.
Oh, well, there will be fucking vampires. Every single character except for Odric and Thalia will be fucking vampires. Fucking Geralf will be a bloody vampire.
Right. There might be 1 or 2 werewolves that they sneak in there, but there was plenty of vampires in this. Whatever. Cool. Oh. We've eventually got to the angry about the werewolf thing. I like it.
Well, because it was inevitable. I know. I can't know. Let's move on. Because they didn't do it. They swung. They were so close. They were about to hit a homer, and then they just scuffed it. Yeah, in a bubble, Daybound, Nightbound is excellent. And I think, like Decayed and like Disturbed, they've really hit upon what they were trying to do in previous sets, but this time they've given it its own mechanic because they feel like they're bold enough now that they can do that. I think it's absolutely fantastic. I just feel like the design notes around everything about it was mishandled, and they were maybe just too worried about things that they shouldn't have been worrying about.
Yeah.
Who cares? People are already going to be flipping over their werewolves like every 5 bloody seconds and taking it in and out of sleeves. It's not going to make it any less or any more efficient.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah.
I do think we're likely to see Daybound Nightbound again in the next set. I don't necessarily know if we'll see Disturb as much.
All Daybound vampires just piles of dust.
Yeah, well, this is the thing. Apparently, they're only irritated. This is a point of contention of how much the vampires of Innistrad care about the sun, because some people mention it's like kind of actively damaging to them, and some quote it as just being like a bit of a nuisance, which makes them a bit OP in my mind.
Was it not Falconwrath Noble? Is it just Vampire Noble? He's clearly walking around in the daytime.
Yeah. Stromkirk Noble. Yeah, the one who's protection from humans. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, he doesn't give a shit. Just cash walking about.
Cool. All right. Well, those are all the unique ones for this set, and then there are some returning interesting ones. So the returning ones, just to kind of flip through them, we've got Flashback is back, Transform cards in general are back, and Curses. Which one excites you most?
I'm always a big fan of Curses. I mean, again, it's hard. Yeah, I'm going to go with Curses. I think Curses are really interesting.
Yeah,
I think it's a type that I was glad we saw more of. It's kind of like it's like the adventure. Not adventure mechanic, the questing mechanic, kind of from Innistrad of where they not Innistrad, sorry, Zendikar, of where they kind of did a little bit the first time. I feel like they could have gone further and never went back to it. With Curses, we keep getting, even in ancillary products, all these different kind of curses, and now we've got a curse commander, which annoyingly isn't in the colours that everyone wants to play it in, which is like, Mardu. I mean, they should have just done 4-colour or 5-colour. Well, actually, maybe not 5-colour. Well, it's too close after Goddess. A 4-colour. Just do a 4-colour curse commander and make everyone happy. But yeah, I'm a big fan of Curses coming back. I think it's a very Innistrad-y kind of like of mechanic, even if it has been seen on other sets and other planes, because it just feels like this idea of being doomed by someone, like whether it's being cursed by a witch or if it's being cursed by a demon. Like I feel like curses are cool. Anything that enchants players, I find is really interesting because you can't remove yourself to get rid of it. But the only thing I will say is I don't feel like there was enough agency playing around with it. Like specifically, the commander does put the curse back on you if it gets put into the graveyard, and then you can move any curse from yourself on the upkeep to a different player. But there's not a lot of reattach to a different player or bounce the curse and reattach. There doesn't seem to be a lot of ways to play around with them. But again, it's a kind of difficult clunky mechanic to do that with anyway. But I think, how many did we get? Like 10, I think, including one of the commander ones.
Well, yeah, I mean, these episodes don't tend to include the commander decks, really.
No, but I mean, I guess when you're only getting like 10 more cards and it's kind of within the set, I don't think we want to dedicate an entire episode to doing both of the decks, right?
No.
So, because I mean, there's not very many interesting things. One's humans, one's zombies. Go figure. But I do like the fact that we are getting more interesting diversity on curses. They're not all just super downsides. They've got some like, maybe this is good, maybe bad, maybe I do want to enchant myself. Maybe I want to enchant someone else. That's how I feel like they should be playing anyway. And I feel like some of them feel more, or sorry, less obvious as to where they should go.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I quite like curses as an enchantment type. I think it's always very evocative of the kinds of things. It's like it's a hex, isn't it? And I think one of my favorite cards, Flavorfully, in the last Innistrad set was a cursed witch, which was a creature on one side and then a curse on the other. Because the narrative was there was a witch that was being slain by an adventurer, and then on the backside, the adventurer is being cursed by the witch that they've just slain, and is now essentially the witch themselves. I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, very very cool.
Yeah, so it's always a nice narrative. Yeah, I like curses. Curses are pretty fun. I would like to see more of them, but I just wonder if you would just end up in a meta where it's just all hate. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, there's no interaction really. You're just like piling up essentially stacks onto your opponent.
It is exactly that, right? It's hate and stacks kind of rolled into one. There's literally one of them that's just a single white Curse of Silence, and it makes a spell of the chosen name of the person that you enchant cost 2 more. You basically just command attacks your opponent's commander before they even have a chance to play it.
It's Aura of Silence, isn't it? But just with more flexibility.
Exactly. Yeah, and I always like the flavor behind them, because things like Curse of Obsession, it's like talking about, it's like the heartbeat. What's the story about the heart that's in the floorboards, and this person keeps hearing this beating heart, so they tear up all of their floor. It's that idea, right? And they're able to present these stories in a curse, which is quite cool. Like some of them are like simple, like the Curse of Clinging Web, sorry, it's spiders. But things like Curse of Deception, again, you can have a bit of narrative play with this, which I think is quite cool.
I'm surprised we didn't see curses or a curse card in Strixhaven. You'd think certain students would curse each other.
Students aren't allowed to curse on school property. They've got to keep a civil tongue in their mouth. Okay? These are youngsters, Andy, and they're not allowed to go around swearing.
Silver Quill students would absolutely curse people.
I mean, yeah, I was surprised that they didn't have something. I mean, there was enough in Strixhaven already, but it does feel like a very Silver Quilly kind of ability, right? A mechanic to actually physically curse someone with a curse word, which is quite cool.
Another Flavor Fail Wizards. Anyway.
Moving on.
Cool. Well, I think that's where we'll do it then. I think the really nice thing about coming back to a new set on an old plane is that whilst at the top of the episode I was kind of maybe a little bit overwhelmed by how much there was and how much new stuff there was piled up on top of layered on things that were already new, is that actually when you sit down and break through them, because you are already because you already understand the language of the plane and the narrative of what they're trying to tell, it's far easier to pass a lot of these new mechanics in a way that is narratively relevant. And it's kind of nice sort of seeing things like Disturbed, like Decayed, like the way that they're treating werewolves now. And it's really sort of cool just to have to make only that little step to get that much more out of them. And I do think in general, I know we've had a bitch and a whinge, as we usually do, but I think in a bubble, as a whole, this seems like the Innistrad set that they always wanted to create. And I can't wait for Crimson Vow, because I can't wait to see what they do with vampires. I really hope they give vampires something more than inherently just having flying, death touch, and lifelink, which, again, very much like how I was always very impressed with zombies, sort of, using the mechanics of the game as they were to evoke of what they were doing, which is very clever. Vampires did the same thing, of where, if you look at Vampire Nighthawk, again, for lots of people, including myself, the seminal vampire, flying, death touch, lifelink, those are things that vampires do. But, obviously, so does everything else, because they're inherent mechanics for the whole game. So I can't wait to see what they give vampires that is like their own thing,
Yeah.
I hope they do.
I hope it's not just because they did a fair number of because they didn't give them their own mechanic in this set, because that would be kind of encroaching on the werewolf space. But a lot of them do this. If your opponent has lost life, it gives them that bloodlust almost. I think there's literally a mechanic in Gruul that did that, right? Of where if your opponent lost life, it comes with a counter or something that kind of showed that kind of like, oh, they're bleeding, let's kill them now, kind of feeling. So I'm hoping they do something that's slightly different to that, but also plays with that. Maybe they'll give them more than one mechanic. Maybe they'll show the different houses doing different things. Who knows?
Quite, because that's in previous Innistrad sets, it's only certain houses that have prominently flying vampires. It's only certain houses that have prominently life-linking vampires. So I hope they really do play on that. And because it is the narrative that it is, hopefully they'll give a bit more character and a bit more flavour to some of the vampire lords as well. But yes, in general, Midnight Hunt, home run mechanically. Just maybe some backdating that they need to do. That's a little bit janky.
So what's going to happen when you've got 26 years of magic, right? Not everything can synergize with each other. It's like creature type errattering, all that kind of nonsense. It's really hard to kind of hit that middle ground between diversity but synergy that works, like, you know, in your brain space. When you put these two werewolves together, they don't work the same. It hurt my brain, make my brain go hurty. So, yeah. Do better, wizards.
Oh wow! Oh harsh.
Yeah, look. Okay, you made it. You've ended on a nice flourish. I'm down. I'm downing it again. No, do better. We expect more.
We expect everything. Give us everything.
Even that beautiful, lovely graveyard set. Can't argue with it. It's lovely, but do better anyway. Try hard.
All right, listeners. If you are in agreement with us, or if you disagree with us, are we being too like precious about the werewolves? Do I just need to get over it? Do I just need to get over it though? Like, do I just need to just like play with Tovalar and just play with the new werewolves and just shut the hell up and just get on with my life?
Well, all 21 of them. Yeah,
all 21 of them. Yeah. And well, Nathan, if I'm being an EDH deck, I have so many changelings I can put into the deck. They're all werewolves, right?
They all work with daybound, nightbounds. Yeah, great. Awesome.
Yeah. You can hit us up on Twitter at mtflavouring. My personal Twitter is at AndyManface. Nathan's, yours is
at the Fox in the Moon.
Emails go to mtflavouring@gmail.com. I know our YouTube channel's been a little bit quiet recently. Just simply we haven't had time to upload any videos. But the videos that are there, we are quite proud of. We've got our Lore Shot series where we've taken quite a few different of favourite commanders from across Magic's history, and we've done little lore videos on them. One of them is the Shadows. It's the Eldritch Moon card of Geezer and Gerolf. So it tells their story up until this set. So I guess we could do an updated version of that as well. But yeah, hit us up on our socials. Let us know what you think about this set. Let us know what you're looking forward to for Innistrad Crimson Vow, and what you're looking forward to playing in Innistrad Midnight Hunt. Is Coven maybe the fixed version of what we've been talking about? Will it be in green-white? Something that's a bit more viable, especially in sort of more casual internal formats. Let us know. I had my big weekend last week where I was away at a stag do, and then it was my birthday on the Sunday as well. I think I've just about caught up. I'm a little bit tired. You saw me in person yesterday. Did I look tired?
No, you looked okay. You look good. Sprightly enough. I think don't we all feel tired recently?
I'm 31 now, Nathan. I'm decayed. I can only attack and I can't block and I get exiled.
Oh, that's perfect. Oh, I love it. Andy Man with decayed. Beautiful.
Oh no.
It's okay.
Cool. All right. All that remains for me to say then is thank you so much for listening. This has been Magic the Flavouring.
We'll see you soon.